Honey, what are you listening to?
Mom!
Your teen might not share everything with you, but teens share everything with each other. And certain everyday behaviors, like sharing food, drinks, or kisses, could mean sharing bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease, known as meningitis. Although meningitis is uncommon, about 1 in 10 who develop it will die. Ask your teen's doctor about missing meningitis vaccinations. Learn more at meningitis.com. Vaccination may not protect all recipients. Sponsored by GSK.
Hi, it's Sierra Miller. I can't wait for you to check out my new collection of shoes and accessories at Designer Shoe Warehouse. If you love shoes as much as I do, then trust me, I got you. From cute sneakerinas to the perfect flip-flops to stunning heels, these shoes are all style, no drama. It's a girl's girl summer, and DSW has just the shoes. Shop the Sierra Miller collection right now at your DSW store or dsw.com.
Today on Partners in True Crime.
Be released. So the most concerning part of all of it is that it applies to life without parole inmates, meaning that, so high profile cases that you would remember is like Scott Peterson. He was sentenced to death. That case got reversed on appeal. They gave him a life without parole. And now all of a sudden, under these regulations, he could become eligible for release.
We've talked to these serial killers on our podcast. We have them on all the time. They call from their cells and they got the tablets now. And we talk to them all the time.
And they have said multiple times if they were released, they would do it again. And they've told this to Laura privately as well.
I do know there is one offender who's been let out. He is in the Los Angeles area. He's incredibly, incredibly dangerous.
All right, so we're back with Partners in True Crime, Serial Killer Whisperer. Laura's here, and we have two other amazing guests to kind of talk about what's going on in California with all these killers possibly being released and stuff. So we have Nina Salerno and we have Anne-Marie Schubert. Anne-Marie has a pretty crazy resume. She was former elected district attorney in Sacramento County, and she was a career prosecutor for over 32 years, prosecuted some of the most violent criminals in California. She's a recognized expert in DNA to identify the guilty and the innocent, to exonerate the wrongfully convicted. And she was the lead prosecutor in the Golden State Killer case. Pretty amazing stuff. So
thanks for being here, Anne-Marie. We appreciate it. But Nina is our wonderful expert that we've always talking to for over the past decade. I went to college with Nina, but Nina is a amazing prosecutor and district attorney of Modoc County in California, and also was one of the authors of the Amber Alert legislation here in California, and also works with Crime Victims United, which is her family's organization that does incredible work for victims and their families. And we're just so grateful to have both of you here today to talk with us and Laura about, like Rob said, what's going on in California.
Yeah. So what is going on in California? We did a podcast last week, and Laura, just for your edification, guys, she spends a lot of time talking to the serial killers that are incarcerating all over the country, but mostly concentrated in California. And she's been able to get a lot of information from them on victims' remains and stuff like that. So she's been doing this work for 10 years, and she gets them to open up. She gets them to sign over their power of attorney for their cases. So she gets all her discovery just so she can find out information on these victims, because that's her main subject, and her quest to doing this work is to try to find these remains for the family. So what's going on?
Want me to start, Nina?
Yeah, go ahead, Ann.
I'd like to start, Anne-Marie. You spearheaded this, though.
Well, what's going on, I would say, is it's crazy. So last fall, the California Parole Board, which is a bureaucratic agency, it's all appointed by the governor. There's no election for these board members. They decided, I'm sure with the governor's urging, to create some new regulations, not laws, but regulations that would allow people serving life without parole, horrible crimes, to get out of prison when they should never be released. So the most concerning part of all of it is that it applies to life without parole inmates, meaning that, so high profile cases that you would remember is like Scott Peterson. He was sentenced to death. That case got reversed on appeal. They gave him a life without parole. And now all of a sudden, under these regulations, he could become eligible for release. There are, in a lot of the California laws, there tends to be exclusions for like murder of police officers or particularly heinous crimes. There's virtually no exclusions under these rules. And so what it means is that somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 7,000 inmates that we would never expect to get out of prison, now all of a sudden they're going to have this pathway to release. So the only exclusions are people sitting on death row, or if they are what we call a 290, meaning they've been convicted of a sex offense. But we actually think the sex offenders are going to sue them to try to be allowed to be released as well. So it's very disturbing. I mean, Nina and I both know this. We've sat with crime victims. I'm sure Laura knows this. We've sat with victims. There's this sense of finality when you go to a sentencing hearing and the judge says, you don't ever have to worry because he's never getting out. And now all of a sudden they're getting letters in the mail. I mean, I got an email. I've gotten a lot of emails since we filed our lawsuit, but families are devastated by these decisions by our unelected bureaucrats doing this.
And how are they able to do this?
Expand a little bit on that too. I'm going to just expand. It is horrendous, but what also is important to know is that they tried to do this in the legislature twice. Senator Cortese and Senator Rubio each ran a bill that was more narrow than what the Board of Prison Terms is doing, but again, would affect life without the possibility of parole. And the people of California spoke. We rallied the victims, the people in the communities, everybody contacted their constituents, and we beat those bills twice. And so basically what CDCR and Governor Newsom are doing is usurping the will of the people, because there was an outcry against it that we didn't want it, that we wanted life without the possibility of parole to mean life without the possibility of parole without any changes. And they've effectively turned their backs on the victims of crime, as well as the people of the state of California that rallied to defeat those bills.
It's crazy. We first kind of discovered all of this from almost 2 years ago. We were with Laura up in San Quentin, and they were quiet because she was doing all this work. She was on death row a lot, talking all the serial killers. So she was getting the inside word. But when we were up there, they were quietly kind of shutting down death row, and they were preparing all the death row inmates, some 500 plus death row inmates, and then they were going to start dotting them around and placing them in different institutions, prisons all around the country. And to me, it's just from a layman's perspective, is we know he did the moratorium on the death sentence. So, death row inmates really weren't death row inmates because there was no death sentence. And then now, 2 years ago, now he was quietly, there was no press about this. We couldn't find any press about this. We were up there, we were shooting some stuff, and they were quietly doing it. And we were kind of shocked that no one really knew about this. And we were hearing at it firsthand because Laura was hearing it from all the death row inmates. And some of them were scared because they're like, we're going to go to General Pop. We're going to be all targets and high valued targets. And then some of them. And so I don't understand how they can just kind of with a rubber stamp do this without the public's knowledge. And now we're at this point now where you have bureaucrats that are basically on the down low with, very few people in the public know about this. And that's why we wanted to do this podcast. We wanted to get it out there because I do think there should be a public outcry. These guys shouldn't be, because we've talked to these serial killers on our podcast. We have them on all the time. They call from their cells and they got the tablets now, and we talk to them all the time.
And they have said multiple times, if they were released, they would do it again. And they've told this to Laura privately as well. Mm-hmm. So now my question for you, Nina, is you guys rallied and you protested these two bills and they did not go. So can you explain what they're doing right now so people understand? Because I told some friends of mine about this and they're like, how is that possible with Newsom not being aware of it? Or is Newsom aware of it? What exactly is the process going on right now?
Newsom's very aware of it. Newsom's very aware of it, and offensively to the victims, he called us political rhetoric. after we did a press conference on July 15th with Anne-Marie and the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, where we have victims speaking about the horrendous crime. One was a 22-week-old baby that was murdered. I mean, just Scott Peterson's family
6
was
weeks,
there,
yeah.
just horrendous cases. And the governor's office called them political rhetoric versus realizing that these were victims. These are people who lost their children, their husbands, their wives, their sons, their daughters, and they're not political rhetoric. Behind each and every one of those inmates that potentially is released is a victim, if not more than one victim, and families that were promised finality, which is nothing brings back your loved one, but having some finality and being able to move your life forward is the only thing we can give these victims. And Governor Newsom and these unelected bureaucrats with the stroke of a pen have taken that away. And furthermore, they are jeopardizing all our communities in California. As you just pointed out, Laura talks to these people. Many of them have no remorse. Many of them will do it again. They're not rehabilitated. And we are putting people in harm's way. They just let out, is it Funston Amory that said in his parole hearing that he still fantasizes about having sex with children, basically. I think Amory can expound a little bit on that. There was public outcry. So I'm going to toss them over her.
Well, I was the prosecutor on the David Funston case. It was my first DNA case in Sacramento, and I knew how bad he was. And he was sentenced to 3 life terms, and the judge made it very clear you should never get out of prison. So 3 life terms turns into 20-something years, and he gets out of prison because he's considered elderly. Under California law, you're considered elderly at the age of 50, and which is a joke because nobody can retire, you can't collect Social Security, and he's dangerous. And the thing about Funston is not only is he an admitted pedophile, but he still does graphic sexual acts in prison while he thinks about children. So that caused public outcry. That kind of got at least my attention, our nonprofit's attention on these parole issues. And then when you start, it's almost like you need a flow chart of all the ways that people get out of prison early. And it's a diabolical effort to just reduce the prison population. And I think when we think about the current stuff that we're talking about, and Laura's should be interested, there's no exclusion for serial killers, okay? Unless you're a sex offender. So thank God Joseph DeAngelo had to register as a sex offender, but there's plenty of other people that are serial killers or mass shooters or school shooters or torture murderers. There's a guy that killed like 7 people in Fresno. He's not a sex offender. So guess what? He would qualify.
What?
I think I said this at the beginning before we started recording. I just watched the Netflix documentary on Brian Koberger, who killed 4 college kids, innocent kids. If he was here in California, he would qualify.
He would qualify to be released from prison.
He would qualify for a second
Parole.
chance to get released. He would qualify for a hearing to be considered, even if it's life without parole, because I guess they think that those people should get out. And the truth is that California voters I think it was 1990, I'm going to age myself now, passed a ballot measure called Prop 115 that dealt with a lot of different criminal justice issues, but one of which said that when you're convicted of a murder with a special circumstances, the judge cannot reduce that. So now we've created this torturous process that would make a case go back to court. Someone like Scott Peterson, the judge would have to say, well, I know a jury convicted you of murder plus the killing of 2 people, and there were special circumstances, but I'm going to give you a lower crime, even though the jury found this and I sentenced you to something harsher. I'm going to give you something. It's this torturous process that you would then put victims through that it just flies in the face of Paul Marcy's law, which is the victim's
Yeah. Absolutely. Laura, tell these women what you've been hearing on the inside from both the inmates and the correctional officers.
Well, I know you said it's death row. They're not, looking at their cases again. But I do know that they have called every single death row inmate down to committee to look over their cases. And I do know there is one offender who's been let out. He is in the Los Angeles area. He's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. He is trying to brand himself as a serial killer expert. He's conned a lot of people already. He has already broken his parole because he is still contacting people in the prison. And once you're on parole, you cannot contact the offenders. But he made a fake account to get on Getting Out to email them. So he's still talking to all the serial killers while he's out. And this man actually threatened to kill his girlfriend and all of her children only 2 years before he was released on San Quentin's death row. She had to file.
How did he get out from death row? How did he come out from underneath that?
I don't know. It was 2 years. She filed a no contact order, called the prison. So the prison knew that he had threatened to kill this woman and her children. And then they let him out.
Jeez. Well.
Yeah, this is really disturbing. So voters have no say in any of this. They're just doing this under the radar just because they want to, and no one can say anything or stop it.
To reduce the prison population. That's what they're quote unquote.
We don't need to reduce the prison population anymore. We no longer are under what we call a federal cap. I mean, initially years ago, the federal courts basically said the prisons are too crowded. You need to reduce the population. So we have gone from 175,000 inmates to somewhere around 90-something thousand. So we've almost cut it. Since 2020, we've released 70,000 inmates. Okay, that's a lot of people. At what point are we going to say enough is enough and just actually hold people accountable? So the other thing about these regulations that are so disturbing is they've decided, even though they're unelected, well, as long as you serve 25 years, we're going to make these recommendations. Well, if we allow this to go forward, nothing stops them next week from saying, well, we think it should be 15 or 10 or whatever it is. It's just the only way the voters can fix this is if the legislature steps in or if we do a ballot measure, which is what we're seriously contemplating now, is to bring it to the voters and let them make the decision.
And when you say they, are you speaking of the Bureau of Prisons or Newsom's office? Who exactly is doing all of this?
I'm sure Nina would agree with this. Anybody that's been high level at corrections that retires tells you everything that's decided comes out of the governor's office. So I would be willing to bet, especially given his snarky comment about political rhetoric, that he was well aware what they were doing. The parole board.
Yeah. So with that
They
in
ultimately
mind,
work for him.
yeah,
Right.
They
And so-
ultimately work for him. He is ultimately responsible. And the thing that, like Anne-Marie hit on, there's no transparency in this administration. CDCR does everything in the cover of night, basically. I've been through 13 parole hearings for the murder of my sister. You can't get those records. We don't know how they vote. I mean, everything is very secretive and probably one of the most critical parts of our criminal justice system when it comes to protecting the public. And you're right, the voters have spoken time and time again, as Anne-Marie pointed out. In 1990, we passed the Criminal Justice Reform Act. Then we passed Marcy's Law in 2009. We've passed, I forget when it was, Anne-Marie, when we worked on the initiative to put in to streamline the process for the death penalty. And each and every time, the administration has turned its back not only on the victims of crime, but on the voters of California. The voters get it. They want safe communities. If you're out there, people will tell you they want their kids to go to school. They don't to be safe, not worry about school shootings and mass shootings or somebody being grabbed off the street. The voters get it. And it's our unelected bureaucrats that are turning their back on them time and time again.
I got a question.
Credit to Anne-Marie's foundation. They are the lawsuit. We have how many numbers of victims and victims groups that have signed on. But the sad thing is you see the toll it takes on these victims to have to retell their story, to have to know that they may have to go through court again. It is torturous, I think is the best word Anne-Marie used, to have to relive this again and then and again. But credit to those victims who are standing tall, because they want, not only for their case, they want this for any future victims and for the protection of our communities.
Absolutely. I mean, just one quick point. So when they release these offenders, I know that a lot of times, I don't know if this is actually true, but like when a sexual offender gets released back into a community, they have to notify the area that he's going to be living in, and they have to notify the residents in the area. Do they have to do this with these killers, or are they just dropping them off?
They're not going to do this. Going to release them to wherever they decide.
And
They're just going to release.
Yeah, because the one I was talking about in Los Angeles, the one who's trying to brand himself as a serial killer, expert, the woman he's going to kill and her children, I had called her and come to find out she lives in the next town of where he was released to, and she had no idea.
Unbelievable. They didn't inform her that he was out?
Nope. Trying to kill her and her kids only 2 years prior, living in the next town. She had no idea.
One of the reasons why victims don't get notified is because when the guy gets sentenced, they are told he's never getting out. So they don't worry about signing up for notifications. So now we have thousands and thousands of victims that now all of a sudden are getting these letters. I mean, I got an email from a woman whose husband was a CHP officer, killed on the courthouse steps in Los Angeles. And he got, the killer was a wannabe gangster, I think, and basically shot him dead just to prove he was tough. He got life without parole. And now under some of the California laws that have changed, she just got a letter saying he's eligible for parole, and she's just living. I mean, rightfully so, right?
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, Anne-Marie, can you tell us a little bit about your foundation and what you are doing with Nina right now to kind of get this out there?
Sure. So I retired at the end of 2022 as DA of Sacramento. Kind of thought I was going to go off and do this retirement thing, and apparently I suffer from ADHD. So somebody asked me if I wanted to come back and run this organization. And honestly, I really believe in the policy. So the Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, been around for 40 something years. Governor Wilson, Pete Wilson's on our board. He was a true champion for crime victims' rights. And so over the years, what we've historically done is get involved in legal issues related to criminal justice. We've done stuff on death penalty. We've done stuff out of state. So this issue of parole really is perfectly in line with what we do. We're very small. I call us small but mighty. We have one main lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a brainiac. So he files our lawsuits. And so what we've done is we have filed a lawsuit against the parole board, challenging them on these regulations, claiming that they don't have the authority to do this. Life without parole is life without parole. They're going to fight us tooth and nail. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if our attorney general tries to support them every way they can, because he wants people getting out of prison too, is my guess. So, it's going to take a period of time, but we're going to fight like hell because it's the right thing to do.
I just don't get it. It's so counterintuitive, and so there's no common sense here. I mean, when you have these killers, they don't change their spots when they're inside. There's no rehabilitation. We've talked to enough of them now. I mean, I used to do a series called Lockup years ago. I spent so much time in California prisons, so I know that these guys, very few of them can kind of transform themselves into viable citizens. So especially when you get onto the higher level kind of killers. So I just don't understand how they're able to do this under in the dark of night without any press talking about it, without anybody else like throwing up a white flag and saying, "What are you doing?"
Well, this is the thing.
It.
I mean, Laura's in another state. Okay, we're in California. We watch the news. I did not know that you guys had a press conference. I didn't see it. Laura saw it in another state, and she's the one that told us. I said, "This is the thing. They're not even reporting on it here. We have no idea what's going on in our own state." This is why this for us was really important to do, and also to get these victims and their voices out there so that people can start making some noise, because we need some noise to be made here. This is unacceptable.
Because what's going to happen? It's going to be like a turnstile now, getting these guys getting out, and hopefully they don't reoffend and they don't kill someone else. But as we know that,
And well, Laura, what is your thought on this? Do you think that they can?
Violent offenders, over 60% do reoffend.
Right.
You know, it needs to be taken very seriously. I mean, that's a high percentage, over 50, it's over 60%. And you know, I'm very worried because I know 2 more death row inmates are being released with the one that's already out. And these are just the ones I know about. So it almost seems like they're doing it quietly, just moving them out. You know, these are death row inmates. And then the ones who have life without parole. I know one is getting out of Vacaville very soon. He has sex crimes against children. He's getting out. So, and it just seems like it's not being reported. Nobody's talking about this, and it's very serious. I mean, people's lives are in jeopardy.
Right. My guess on the death row ones is that they were people that were sentenced under the old statute that then got converted to life that'll let them out. That's the way they're managing all this. But it's, the other thing about it is people talk about they are rehab, they're not rehab. Whether they're rehabbed or not doesn't change the crime. That's the thing that we have to never forget
Exactly.
is that the crimes are so horrific. I mean, when you are sentenced to life without parole or the death penalty, everybody knows it's the worst of the worst. Okay. They are a very, very small number of the population of the everyday types of crimes we see. And so we have now an unelected group of people that think it's a good idea to just bypass the legislative process. Listen, we have laws because we go through a process. We have a public hearings. We get to go up and we get to say our point of view. They'll try to tell you it was public because they did these, public comment periods, but it's nowhere near the level of transparency at all as a legislative process. And they couldn't, as Nina said at the beginning, they couldn't get bills through that would only allow people under 26 to get out. Now we've opened it up to everybody. Any age.
That's my point. I mean, this bill was rejected by the public. People did not want this bill to pass.
Twice.
And now here they're doing twice. So now you're doing it under the radar without any of us knowing. So we have no say in who's coming to our communities here in California.
Do you think this has anything to do with the fact that Newsom's term is coming to a close and there's a possibility that there could be a Republican governor and that they want to just kind of open the door, let him get as much done before someone else gets into office?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get too much into politics, but
no,
it seems like he's swinging left or more and more left. I mean, people oftentimes, I'm sure Nina gets asked this, do you think he's going to commute people off death row before he goes? I mean, that's a question that he has to answer. He promised the voters before he was elected as governor, I'm not going to mess with the death penalty. Look what he does. Mm-hmm. He gave Mark Klass maybe 30 minutes notice to tell him that he was going to put a moratorium on the death penalty of his child's killer.
Where's the logic here? There is no logic here. I mean, Nina, for you, you're the victim of a crime.
There is none.
The horrific crime that you endured with your sister and then building Crime Victims United. I mean, I can't even imagine how do you feel about all of this right now? Like, it must be so beyond infuriating.
It defies logic. I mean, there is no logic. And it's infuriating as a victim, not only as a prosecutor, but as a victim. And as I said, listening to these victims having to relive, and Anne-Marie and I have both done it, stood by them in court. I've stood by my own family as they've had to relive it 13 times. To have to go through it again and again and again it just defies what our criminal justice system is about. As Anne-Marie said, when you're sentenced to life without parole or death row, you are the worst of the worst. And the jury takes that decision very seriously. Prosecutors charge very few cases in those. They have to be horrific cases. Then you go to the jury system. That's why we have one of the greatest systems in the world, the jury system. Bureaucrats should not be able to usurp the jury system or the criminal justice system and change these sentences. Justice is supposed to be a shield for the most vulnerable, not a revolving door for those who have caused irreparable harm. And that is what it's turning into in this current administration. under the guise of justice or criminal justice reform, I guess, they are just turning the entire system upside down. They are jeopardizing the safety of California. I mean, it's no wonder California is actually, what was it, just recently in the last 2 weeks, ruled one of the worst places to ever live now in the United States, when it used to be one of the best. And part of it is because of the way our justice system is becoming a revolving door at this point. And there is nothing. The victims' voices are completely shut out, which again, I would point out is not what the people of California wanted. People have supported victims. They have supported public safety. And so it defies logic that we have an administration that is supposed to listen to their constituents that's effectively closed the door. In fact, Crime Victims United wrote a letter after he called us political rhetoric, after he called all these victims political rhetoric. We wrote a letter to the governor saying, we'd like to meet with you. We'd like you to talk to Lacey Peterson's family. We'd like to talk to you about baby Ayala's family. Nothing. Dead silence.
Of course.
We have not gotten a response yet.
But how is that? He's an elected official. He's supposed to talk to us.
He doesn't have to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, remember what he did on the death penalty. I mean, at least what I heard through the grapevine was that he gave Mark Class 30 minutes notice that he could come in and he was going to tell him he was going to put a moratorium. I mean, what a disgrace. What a disgrace.
I was actually with Mark. I got called to that meeting with Mark. And you're right, Anne-Marie. We had a 30-minute notice to come to the governor's office. We, myself, Mark Class, and a few others sat with the governor and his wife after we, listened to him tell us how hard, they can't understand what we've been through, how hard it is to lose a sibling, a child, but that he told us that he was putting a moratorium on the death penalty. And it was the day after he took office, after he promised the voters to get elected, that he would uphold the death penalty. I don't know how Mark Class kept it together, but I will never forget him standing up, looking the governor in the eye and saying, my heart was pierced the day Polly was murdered. You just put the second piercing in it, and walked out the door. And that is truly what he is doing to each and every victim with these new regulations.
Well, just from a practical sense, I mean, what are these killers and these lifers and life route without parole people? I mean, what is the plan when they get out? Are they going to be subsidized by the state now? I mean, these people they're not going to be able to get jobs. Where are they going to live? I mean, so when they're backed into a corner like that, you put a lifetime inmate who has propensity for killing people and taking people's lives for fun, sometimes just for sexual gratification. If you back them into a corner where they have no ways of supporting themselves. So are we subsidizing? We're going to be paying for their rent and their food and all this stuff?
I can imagine that we will be for many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens when something
and honestly,
happens
we'll
again?
be paying with people's lives.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That
We're
was
gonna
my
be paying with people's lives.
That's what I'm saying. People are going
It's
to die.
Absolutely what is going to happen. It is
Yeah.
absolutely what's going to happen. And like Anne-Marie said, whether you're rehabilitated or not, you were sentenced to life in prison. And that is the sentence that should stand. And so to even...
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about. Like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
come close to letting these people out, then letting them out, we are going to pay with people's lives. Because just like David Allen Funston, who still has fantasies about raping children, and he said it in the parole hearing. Am I correct, Anne-Marie? I think he said it exactly.
Oh, yeah, he said it. And he also, the prior parole hearing, he talked about masturbating in prison while he thinks about these children. But now he's got an urgent parole plan. I mean, the reality of the parole process is most of these inmates, whether rehabilitated or not, are going to fake it as much as they can in front of the parole board. They're going to read a few chapters of a book called The Road to Freedom, and they're going to sit there and they're going to be commended because they did this work. But the parole board is not going to really look at the crimes that he committed because they assert that they're not entitled to really look at that and making decisions. So it's really a screwed up system that perhaps is driven up by ideology, perhaps it's driven by money, but no amount of money is going to bring Nina's sisters back. That's it. And we have to recognize that there's just certain crimes that if they get life, that should mean life, period. It's over.
Yeah. So Laura, I mean, you've been studying these guys' brains now for over 10 years now, written, you know, you're on your second book about this. You talk to these guys every day. I mean, every time we're on the phone with Laura, she's getting calls from prisons and she's on the phone. She's got thousands of hours of recording. I mean, from a psychological standpoint, how could, is there any way these guys can jump the shark and not become a killer and have an awakening after reading a couple chapters from a book?
Well, I'm not going to say, there's no absolutes when it comes to the, human psyche, but I mean, they're violent offenders. Like I said, over 60% do reoffend. And then also you're releasing them out with no core life skills. They've been incarcerated, most of them over 20, 25 years. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're going to go back to a life of crime just to sustain themselves, to have food, money. This is the biggest factor of why people even go back, into a life of crime, is they just don't know how to function, especially when they've been incarcerated for that long. And that's what's happening, is they're really just releasing them. There's no steps to, really rehabilitate them. I mean, they have a parole officer, but there's nothing once they get out there. They're checked on for a year and then that's it. So I think it's a situation.
It's really important to remember what Anne-Marie and Nina are saying here, that they were put away because of the violent crimes that they committed. These are not people that were wrongfully convicted. We've worked on wrongfully convicted cases. We've gotten people out of prison that were wrongfully convicted. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who committed these crimes. It was proven that they committed these crimes. They're not wrongfully convicted. And now they're going to be let out as if they suddenly are not that person again. That makes absolutely no sense at all. I mean, how are they going to go back in? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the most important thing is that, and it's the hardest part, is you have to talk about the facts of the crime for the public to truly understand it. Exactly. Nina referenced our press conference. We had a mother and a grandmother there whose 41-day-old baby was tortured to death over a week-long period of time by her father. The baby was 41 days old, okay? The whole thing was on videotape. And that person pled to life without parole. Now, those are hard facts, okay? The killing of a police officer in San Francisco, the killing of Joshua Bird, who's a parole agent, sitting in his office in Oakland, gunned down by a parolee, allegedly. If we don't talk about the facts, people like to sugarcoat it and like, oh, they're not that bad. But when people like Laura talks to these people about the true crimes, people are like, holy shit, why would we let somebody like this out?
Exactly. This is why we do this podcast and we do documentaries about this stuff, because we're trying to get the word out that this sugarcoating of violent crimes has got to stop. The victim shaming has got to stop. I mean, we're working on the Noah Presgrove case. They victim shamed this kid. He was found naked on the side of the road, dead, beaten to death, and they want to pretend that he got hit by a car. I mean, it's just insanity, the stuff that we see, and it, as you know, in this system. But what is really disturbing is what you're saying is that the public has no voice here. They're just going behind our backs as the voters in this state and just doing whatever they want. That's not a democracy.
I think if the voters...
There's something wrong here. We need to say something. Voters need to speak out. Something needs to be done.
Well, and they have, like Nina said.
I know, but more people, but we didn't even know about this until Laura told us. So that's what I'm saying.
Honestly, because it's moving forward, and I'm getting calls every day from the inmates themselves saying, like, I'm going out, and it just seems like it's happening so quickly and secretively. No one even knows. There's been death row inmates released, and I think there needs to be something like a Megan's Law, where people in the state of California can go online and actually see where they are being placed, because it is dangerous, and there's no other way to combat this if they're just going to release them than to have something like on the internet where people can actually go and see where they are, just as like a precaution that people in the state of California can go look up, because these are dangerous offenders and everybody should know where they are.
So the Bureau of Prisons and the bureaucrats who work in the prison system, they're just stamping paper. Is that what's going on? Is that the process that's going on right now? Or do
Probably
people
most likely just doing the will of the governor. That's what they're doing.
Okay, so it's all being orchestrated from above.
Yeah, and it is. So, and it's insane. So, like, even if you're at a parole hearing and say they give you can give denials between 5 and 15 years at a parole hearing, right? So, victim walks out thinking they got a 10-year denial. Well, guess what? CDCR goes and pulls that file so that they can get an earlier hearing. So there's no reprieve for the victims, not with the life without the possibility of parole. Even at the other parole hearings, they're just being lied to. And it's coming down from the administration that's just turned its back all the way around.
Yeah.
I got an email right after this lawsuit. If it's okay, I'll tell you one quick story. I got an email from the brother of a murder victim from San Francisco, where a guy killed his brother, horribly raped, tortured his wife to death. The person was sentenced to death in San Francisco, like in the early 70s. The death penalty got thrown out for a small period of time in California. So that person's sentence was then converted to life. This is probably the type of population Laura deals with. So that brother wanted me to know that he has had to go to 18 parole hearings despite the killer getting the death penalty. And he said, this is exactly what will happen to all of these families if these regulations go through. They will have to I mean, look at Nina. You've been through 13, okay? How many more are you going to have to go through? Probably a lot, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, are they alerting at least? I mean, is law enforcement aware of this? Because I can't imagine like the sheriffs and the police departments around California are happy about these people getting let out and possibly put in their communities, that they're going to have to worry about whether or not they're going to be killing people again. I mean, if I was a law enforcement person, I'd be freaking out. I'm like, why are you letting out the guy that we caught and we convicted? And, now he's going to come back in, and then there's a possibility that we have to kind of be on pins and needles to just determine whether or not he's going to have a horrific crime spree again.
Well, a lot of the police organizations are fully behind us. They're livid. They buried an officer. The person got life without parole that killed that officer. And now all of a sudden, poof, we're just going to undo all of that. So in addition to being upset about just everyday folks that are victimized, but they're obviously also upset about the fact that they have people that are killing police officers being sentenced to life without parole that now can get out. So it's really disturbing what's happening. That's why we're so proactive about it. If people want to learn more, they can go to our nonprofit website and look it up and look at Nina's stuff. She's got a ton of stuff on it as well.
Is there a civil rights case to be made here for the victims' families? I mean,
I'm not a civil rights person, but
I mean, it's like they have, the community, law and law enforcement, we have the right to be living in a safe environment. And they're now they're just throwing killers out so they can kill people again. It just makes no sense.
You're right. It makes absolutely no sense. And I think that's why we have, with law enforcement agencies and other victims, are joining with Anne-Marie's group on this lawsuit. And as Anne-Marie mentioned, there's some serious discussion of an initiative, because we believe that the voters get it. And I will give you an example. Was it 3 years ago, Anne-Marie, Mary Kate Tibbetts, after COVID, so 4 years ago now, when California tried the zero bail experience, because, we had COVID and we couldn't hold people and all that, and they were releasing horrendous people. Mary Kate Tibbetts was an innocent woman in Sacramento. Her killer had a record probably taller than any building any of us are in, very violent individual. And it was in Anne-Marie, I think, was the district attorney at the time too. It was in her county. He was released. He broke into her house, sexually assaulted her, burned her, killed her dogs, and that stopped the zero bail that the governor and his administration were trying to put through. But it took the horrendous killing of an individual, a human being, to stop that. And unfortunately, I think that's the same thing that's going to happen here, is that these people that are being released, we're going to have a horrendous killing of a child or another human being. And it's so preventable. That's what's so frustrating.
I know. And then they backpedal. Whoa, that kind of thing.
No, politics aside, red, blue, whatever. None of that matters. What matters is that people are at risk. Human lives are at risk. And we cannot just sit here and allow this to happen because of politics and rhetoric. That's ridiculous to say that these people are suddenly going to be, rehabilitated, like Laura said, like without any training, without any plan. And that was the biggest thing. We've talked to a lot of serial killers and we've talked to a lot of murderers in this work that we do. And every single one of them said idle hands are the work of the devil. And all of them had idle hands in the times that they were doing a lot of these serial killings and murders because they didn't have a plan. So you're going to take these people who have already proven that they can't be in society because they violently murder somebody. You put them away. The victim's family can breathe for a minute because they feel like, okay, at least some justice has been done. Then you're going to now forget about the victim and the family. Let's take this person who now reads a couple of pages in a paragraph and says, oh, this person is completely rehabilitated. We're just going to let them right back out into society. What kind of lunacy is this?
Or the ones you told us about that they're basically telling him that what he's doing inside prison and what he was.
Well, we know from serial killer X, he told me straight up, absolutely. If I got out, I would kill again. I like it. I mean, that's terrifying. And Laura, he's up. He's up for review.
Yeah, he stopped talking to us. Because he was up for review.
One thing that I think is really important, especially since Laura's from out of state, if this happens in California, you can guarantee yourself it will spread.
That's what
one of our colleagues once said is there's a cancer in California and it's spreading across this country. Yeah. And so if we're not willing to stand up and stop this now, you can rest assured. I did the research. No other state has done what they're doing here. Okay. If you start thinking about perhaps the ideology of people, why do people think this is a good idea? I mean, I have lots of friends and on both sides of the political aisle. I haven't found anybody that thinks it's a good idea.
No.
Except our parole board and perhaps our governor. And
why? Why the parole board?
Because they're appointed by him. Because they serve at his will.
Bureaucratic appointees.
It's their job. It's their professional job. Like, what are they going to go against him? That's their boss.
Right. They're appointed.
Well, actually, their job.
What's ironic is that on the David Funston case, once we raised the alarms on the David Funston case, 2 of those commissioners were not reaffirmed by the Senate. So why should it take people blowing up the media about a case? Why should it take a horrific outcome to exercise good policy?
Unfortunately, that's the way it works. We deal with this every day. That's why we do the podcast, because these poor victims, they don't get the restitution and the help they can from the legal system. So they actually reach out to us. They go, can you get my case in the spotlight? Can you do this? They're not doing this. They're going to let this guy's going to walk free. He killed my cousin, my daughter, my whatever. And then, can you get it out there? That's why they reach out to us. We get emailed every day. These people in these cases, and they're like going, they're going to screw this up. They're not interviewing this person. I know he did it. We know he did it. There's evidence that he did it, and they're going to let him go.
So for our audience, what would you both suggest that they do to start getting attention on this situation we have in California?
Well, I think raise the alarms. I mean, they can go onto our website, which is Criminal Justice Legal Foundation. They can go onto Nina's website. Particularly if you're crime victims, especially if you're here in California, join our coalition. We are very appreciative of you guys raising the alarms, but we have to keep doing it.
Absolutely.
Because the minute they're not under the microscope, the minute they're going to go back to the same behavior.
Exactly.
People forget very quickly.
Well, they can't forget about this because this, like you said, and I told this to Laura last week, I said, if it starts here, it's going to spread across the country. And then before you know it, the entire country is now releasing violent offenders, murderers, and the victims and their families, they get no justice. Victims of murderous crimes get no justice. Just keep that in your mind. God forbid you are a victim of a crime and you lose a loved one, that person would never get justice. That is horrifying in the United States of America. Yeah. That should not be happening here 100%. At all.
It is. And like I agree with Anne-Marie that to the victims out there, I think going on her website or going on Crime Victims United, joining our coalition, even if you can't be when we do a press conference, when we need letters, it's the outcry that is important. If you're willing to allow us to tell us your story, show a picture of a loved one. Anne-Marie's website, we're linked together where we have pictures of loved ones. Those bring humanity to the issue. They raise the awareness in the public, and they give us the ability to fight this administration with the voice of the public behind us and the voice of the victims. So really reaching out like that, digging deep, because it takes a lot. You have to deal with a lot of pain, but if you can dig deep through your pain and use it to help us stop this, is really what I think Anne-Marie and I are asking victims of crime to do. Because if we join together and we have a strong voice, we have made a difference in California. Initiatives.
Absolutely.
We've made a difference. We've always had successful outcomes, and we're down for the fight. I mean, Anne-Marie and I always have the saying, if not us, then who? And we're going to stand up for the victims.
Yeah. I mean, God bless you both that you're doing this work, because I don't, we were astonished last week when Laura told us this on the podcast. We were like, because like you said, we talk to these guys all the time on our podcast. And we're like, this guy's going to get let out.
Yeah. I mean, what we would love to do is
you guys for allowing us to come on things like this.
Absolutely. What I'd like to do is to continue this conversation and maybe talk to some of the victims who are speaking out and are comfortable speaking out about this, because I do think, like you said, Anne-Marie, it's really important to remember the violence that occurred in order for this person to be incarcerated in the first place, and that we have to get into the disgusting details of it so people can understand what's really going on here. We can't sugarcoat this. So, all right. Well, and Laura, always thank you both for your time.
And keep on doing the great work. And we'll put links to your website on our. Yeah. No, because people need to know. People need to know, and it's hard enough to get a conviction on these crimes as it is, as you know, Anne-Marie. It's a laborious process. I mean, we have a case where the woman's father, after 44 years, finally admitted 3 times that he killed her mother, and recorded to police and everything. And they're hemming and hawing whether or not they're going to go to trial for it.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
We deal with a lot of,
and he could walk free. We're going to find out this week if the judge decides evidence can't be admitted and his confession is no good and whatever. And even though he did it 3 times to law enforcement and they recorded it, he could walk free.
Wow,
it is scary. Anyway, thank you all. Appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good luck with everything.
Thank
Okay.
you for having us.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.